the truth that Mayorkas knew at the time but wasn't willing to tell Senator Josh Hawley was that they didn't vet. They didn't vet any of them. They stuffed them on planes and brought them to America. 62% of Americans, according to the most recent Rasmussen poll, agree with what Nancy Mace is saying and what Trump is doing, which is to have the strictest and highest levels of vetting for any immigrant coming into the country, let alone an Afghan national. And this is a national security issue and part of the platform that Donald Trump was voted in to do, which is to make America safer again.
As a final insult to injury, the withdrawal of US forces under President Biden was a complete humiliating disaster. That's the context for why many Afghans were allowed to move to the United States and to the UK, and the context is important. Tragically, one of those Afghans, a 29-year-old man who had worked with the CIA, shot 2 National Guard members in DC on the eve of Thanksgiving, killing one and severely injuring the other. Visibly angry, President Trump blamed the Biden administration.
Why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let him in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here. You're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful.
Well, Trump is...
Again, look at the just blatant disregard for facts that the media has here when they're asking, well, why would you be blaming Biden, Donald Trump? Does anybody remember the chaos that happened during the Kabul exit from that airport? Over 85,000 Afghan nationals came to America unvetted. The Biden administration promised us that they were vetting every one of them and walking around like, why, of course we would. Why wouldn't we? Right? Almost blaming us, the folks that are questioning them, for just asking a stupid question. The truth of the matter is that they weren't vetted. And now we have this issue that's happening and tragedy that's happened in Washington, D.C., where an Afghan national that worked for the CIA went ahead and attacked 2 National Guardsmen. Despicable. Despicable. And Joe Biden has blood on his hands for this because he owns this. The chaotic withdrawal and the unvetting of these nationals. 85,000.
Has now halted all immigration requests from Afghanistan. The White House is now threatening to escalate deportations for Afghans, meaning many people who work with the United States against the Taliban could be returned to a country controlled by the Taliban. Earlier this year, it emerged that thousands of Afghans had been secretly invited to the UK to avoid exactly that scenario. UK officials had accidentally outed them, endangering entire families, and the whole thing was shamefully covered up. But once the mistake was exposed, what choice did Britain have? The issue surely is not the principle of helping Afghans who served our forces, but the way it's been done. This was Biden's Homeland Security Chief, Alejandro Mayorkas, testifying in the Senate.
Just a quick interruption from the story. If you're an America First voter and you love President Trump, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. If you could also like this video or leave a comment down below, all of that goes a long way to telling the algorithm to boost us. Believe me, the liberals, the YouTube algorithm, and everybody that isn't America First is trying to suppress our voice again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now back to the story.
The standard procedure is an in-person interview for refugees or visa applicants. Now, you've testified that you're not doing those interviews.
Not at all. You are correct that we are not conducting in-person full refugee interviews of 100% of the individuals.
What percentage are you conducting?
I don't have that information.
What number have been interviewed? What percentage have been given an actual interview by a trained official before they come to the country?
When you're speaking of a full refugee-like interview, I don't have that data.
This should infuriate you, where we see Mayorkas sworn in testimony saying he just doesn't know. Over 85,000 Afghan nationals came to America during that one event, the chaotic withdrawal from Kabul. All of them went unvetted. That's what we know now. So the truth that Mayorkas knew at the time but wasn't willing to tell Senator Josh Hawley was that they didn't vet. They didn't vet any of them. They stuffed them on planes and brought them to America. But, again, ask yourself, why would they ever want this? If you're Mayorkas and Biden, why would you ever agree to do this? Well, chaos. When you have chaos in the cities, then the politicians have more control. That's what they wanted. They wanted to be able to buy elections. That's certainly been proven to be true as well. Mayorkas and Biden have blood on their hands. In Washington, D.C., we saw just over the weekend 2 National Guardsmen were attacked by this CIA asset that, again, was allowed to come right in under the guise of having an empathetic U.S. government to the plights of these Afghan nationals that went unvetted. This is despicable. Despicable, and this is something that Trump has to deal with as he's cleaning up and re-vetting everybody that Mayorkas and Biden should have.
Well, Afghan groups in the United States are begging Trump not to tar all of them with the brush of his lone madman, but it's frankly hard to see any other outcome. Many Afghans have paid a heavy price for other people's mistakes, and the price is about to get even higher. I'll be joined by my panel to discuss all this in a moment, but first, joining me now is Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman Mace, thank you very much indeed for rejoining me on Uncensored.
Of course, thank you for having me.
This is obviously a horrifying incident to have happened with deadly consequences. What is your overview about the significance of it and what America should do by way of response?
Well, number one, my heart bleeds for the families who are grieving today and who are praying for the second National Guardsman who's still fighting for his life. And I'm praying for Sarah's family. It's devastating. These soldiers volunteered their lives to protect our country. Shot, one murdered, assassinated, the other one fighting for his life right now. The second thing that I want to say is that I believe President Biden created this problem, and President Trump is the one cleaning it up. I agree with the president to go back and vet those individuals that came over here from countries of concern, because from what we're learning now, the vetting wasn't what it was supposed to be. It's deeply concerning. I also support President Trump in pausing the immigration for individuals that are coming from countries of concern. And thank God President Trump got elected, because he shut the border down. We know that
62% of Americans, according to the most recent Rasmussen poll, agree with what Nancy Mace is saying and what Trump is doing, which is to have the strictest and highest levels of vetting for any immigrant coming into the country, let alone an Afghan national. So this is a popular America First policy. This is what Trump has to do, i.e. cleaning up Biden and Mayorkas' mess. And this is a national security issue and part of the platform that Donald Trump was voted in to do, which is to make America safer again. So again, a lot of that has to go back and clean up Biden's, intentional destruction of our country and our immigration policies. That's what Nancy's getting at. Totally agree. And I think at this point, a pause is the only prudent measure.
that under 4 years of President Biden, our southern border was wide open. We had hundreds of potential terrorists coming through the southern border every single year on the terrorist watch list. And these are the kinds of things that we have to be very vigilant about.
The problem,
over 300 people, terrorists, made it across the southern border that were on our watch list that were not gotaways. That doesn't include the gotaways. So 300 that we know of that were already on the terror watch list. That's what Nancy's getting at. That's how bad the open border policies were from Mayorkas and Biden. These people are not coming here to assimilate and to celebrate American culture. They're sleepers right now in sleeper cells that are just waiting for orders to completely go after the heart of what makes America America, which is our freedoms, which is our celebrations, which is our culture, and ultimately our innocence. Joe Biden has this right now, and Mayorkas has it on their hands. Donald Trump, unfortunately, has to clean it up. Last point before we get back to this interview. remember that there were over 20,000 green on blue incidents of physicality and attacks in the last 4 years. What's a green on blue attack? Green on blue attack is where an immigrant or a recent illegal attacked a police officer. Over 20,000. So the saying that the Democrats are running with, right, or the message that they're running with, is that these are women and children and innocents and they contribute to society. These are people that are assaulting our police force and our first responders. This according to CBP. Incidentally, this was Joe Biden's term, right? 20,000 physical assaults against our Border Patrol. From illegal aliens towards our federal agents and our first responders. Despicable.
With all this is not that Ramanullah Lakanwal, the killer, became a terrorist and committed an act of terror against these two National Guard members. The problem is that prior to that, he would have been categorized as somebody who'd been quite heroic, working for the United States as part of a secret unit of Afghans, hunting down the Taliban under CIA direction, often in highly dangerous missions. They were members of what was called the Zero units. They were among the most extensively vetted of any of the Afghans who worked with American forces. The CIA hailed...
What Pierce needs to understand here, because I see where his question's going, is that vetting on the battlefield is different than vetting to be allowed to have the privilege of living in America. He should know this. He's not a dummy. He's setting up Mace right now to try to delineate between the vetting that the CIA did for this idiot to help in the efforts over in Afghanistan versus the proper vetting that needs to be had to be an American citizen. You can see where Pierce is going. This is a setup, and Nancy should slam this one down.
Bravery, their skill, their loyalty, and the agency prioritized their evacuation from Afghanistan following the fall of Kabul in 2021 because they were prime targets for the Taliban. So when you take everything in totality, obviously this character, Lakanwal, has gone crazy and has committed a despicable act. But I guess my question for you is, given the background of him and people like him who were risking their life on behalf of the United States, this adds a complexity to the story, doesn't it?
Well, you're categorizing it as a collective group of individuals, a large group of individuals, that we had American soldiers that were begging the U.S. to allow their translators to come over to the U.S. that work with them and help save American lives. And many people supported that. However, there was supposed to be a vetting mechanism to make sure that some people didn't slip through the cracks. And so we have not seen any more information about this individual. And I would debate you on, the problem isn't that he shot the guardsman. It is the problem. I mean, he literally just murdered a young woman Friday. She died and passed away. Sarah died and passed away on Friday. So that is the crux of the problem. He came into our country. He murdered Americans.
Don't get me wrong. No, sorry, just to be clear, I completely concur with you about that. There's nothing about what he did that is anything other than a despicable act of terrorism and should be treated accordingly. I just think the complexity is in the way America now responds with all the other Afghan soldiers, for example, or translators, interpreters, and so on, who came back after serving on behalf of the United States. That is the complexity of the bigger picture.
Well, that's where I want to see the DOJ and other agencies, DHS and others, explain how this individual was vetted. What information did we have? Was he vetted? Were there signs prior, so that we can improve the vetting process going forward as well? And look, the president has said he wants to go back and vet all these individuals, and I support him. It's going to be a long and arduous process, but we have to do that for the safety of American lives, and I fully support that. I think there's something to be learned from this experience as well.
Keep in mind that it's since come out that the neighbors of this individual have said that he's a nice guy, but he also seemed to be displaying some manic episodes and a little bit of extreme behavior. That should be, again, if you're watching, it's not only vetting these people to allow them into the country, it's watching them as they assimilate, or the lack of assimilation in certain instances, into our country. And if you're not willing to do that, immigration without assimilation is really just an invasion. That's the truth. The truth. So if this individual had some manic behavior, some extremist language and behavior, but was nice to his neighbors, that should show everybody watching that he could be a person that we need to have concern on and should be watched with a greater lens. Was that happening? No.
The lesson, it seems to me, that could be most acutely learned from this is that he appears to have been suffering increasing problems in his life. One email cited by the Associated Press warned that Ramanula has not been functional as a person, father, and provider of March last year. He quit his job. He shut himself in a darkened room for days. He stopped responding even to his wife and older children. Should the United States government, when they bring people like this person back to the United States, albeit for well-intentioned reasons, yes, they should be properly vetted, obviously. But as we know from homegrown incidents involving American citizens who served and then go crazy, as we've seen in the UK, similar stories where perfectly decent, upstanding members of the armed forces go mad and commit terrible acts. It can happen, particularly if they've been to war. Yes, they should be properly vetted, but should there be an ongoing process of duty of care,
Absolutely,
stroke vetting, that continues, that flags up people like this who are clearly beginning to disintegrate in their lives?
Well, I would be supportive of that. I don't know what the details of our vetting process are, or if they do continue. I mean, there might be some process that is already in place to watch people or monitor if there is suspicious behavior, but it's not.
Again, I'm going to jump in here. Nancy Mace, you should know the vetting process because this is a national security issue, and this is something that Congress should be passing bills for, right? With Thune and Johnson, we have the majority. This should be something that we should be passing laws for if they don't exist. But if you see this decomposing behavior of this individual that is attempting to assimilate, by the way, assimilating into our country isn't just living here. Assimilating is participating and building into the society that you're in. Clearly, he'd withdrawn. This should be a huge red flag. Huge red flag, and why it wasn't picked up on is something that Nancy Mace and her colleagues in Congress must address.
Not just soldiers that go to war and come home that then become a risk. There are a lot of people, we know that during COVID and coming out of COVID, a lot of mental illness came forward, and you talk about the transgender issue, there are a lot of mental health issues there, and we've seen people turn violent because of that. But it's not just soldiers. I think there's an even larger problem across the board of people taking to the streets and violating people, whether it's physical assault, shooting an ICE officer, burning down the streets of LA, cars being blown up in LA, you name it. We do have a problem with violence, and it's not just in America. Look at the immigrants that have come into Europe and what they've done. I mean, you've got teenage girls in England trying to defend themselves with knives, being threatened with arrest or being arrested because they don't want to be raped by these violent immigrants who are coming in from these countries of concern into their own countries. And so I think it's a much bigger problem across the board, not just in America, but everywhere.
So do you agree with what Donald Trump is doing, which is putting a pause on all third world country immigration? Do you also agree that we need to go backwards and put Congress on Front Street to be able to have laws, if we don't presently have them, that can properly vet every single person that's been brought over that was an asset or had a relationship in a foreign war with America? At the present point, there's over 90,000 Afghan nationals from that one event in Kabul that came across, were assimilated or put into our country and done so not vetted. We know that according to Mayorkas and his sworn testimony. This is a critical issue. This is an issue that strikes at the heart of one of the platforms that Donald Trump had, which is to make America safe again. So if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to America First Alert. You can do so right over here. And secondly, we have a few suggestions for videos. Again, what we're trying to do in this channel is to get our voice out, to get our platform out to as many people as possible. We'll see you in the next video.